Me and Mad Dog. Arlie Wanderdale, who teaches music once a week at our school, though Ma says he's no teacher at all, just a local song plugger. Arlie Wanderdale asked if I'd like to play a piano solo at the Palace Theater on Wednesday night. I grinned, pleased to be asked, and said, "That'd be all right." I didn't know if Ma would let me. She's an old mule on the subject of my schooling. She says, "You stay home on weeknights, Billy Joe." And mostly that's what I do. But Arlie Wanderdale said, "The management asked me to bring them talent, Billy Joe, and I thought of you." Even before Mad Dog Craddock? I wondered. "You and Mad Dog," Arlie Wanderdale said. "That darn that blue-eyed boy with his fine face and his smooth voice, twice as good as a plowboy has any right to be." I suspected Mad Dog had come first to Arlie Wanderdale's mind, but I didn't get too riled. Not so riled I couldn't say yes. January 1934. Permission to play. Sometimes, when Ma's busy in the kitchen, or scrubbing, or doing wash, I can ask her something in such a way I annoy her just enough to get an answer, but not so much I get a no. That's the way I found of gaining what I want, by catching Ma off guard, especially when I'm after permission to play piano. Right out asking her's no good. She always gets testy about me playing, even though she's the one who truly taught me. Anyway, this time I caught her in the slow stirring of biscuits, her mind on other things, maybe the baby growing inside her, I don't know. But anyhow, she was distracted enough, I was determined enough. This time I got just what I wanted, permission to play at the Palace. January 1934. On stage. When I point my fingers at the keys, the music springs straight out of me. Right hand playing notes sharp as tongues, telling stories while the smooth, feathery rhythms back me up on the left. Folks sway in the palace aisles, grinning and stomping, out of breath. And the rest, eyes shining, fingers snapping, feet tapping. It's the best I've ever felt. Playing hot piano, sizzling with Mad Dog, swinging with the Black Mesa Boys, or on my own, crazy, pestering the keys. That is heaven. How supremely heaven playing piano can be. January 1934. Birthday for FDR. I played so well on Wednesday night, Arlie put his arm across my shoulder and asked me to come and perform at the President's birthday ball. Ma can't say no to this one. It's for President Roosevelt. Not that Mr. Roosevelt will actually be there, but the money collected at the ball, along with the balls all over the country, will go, in the President's name, to the Warm Springs Foundation, where Mr. Roosevelt stayed once when he was sick. Someday, I plan to play for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself. Maybe I'll go all the way to the White House in Washington, D.C. In the meantime, it's pretty nice Arlie asking me to play twice for Joy City. January 1934. Not too much to ask. We haven't had a good crop in 3 years, not since the bounty of '31, and we're all whittled down to the bones these days, even Ma with her new round belly. But still, when the committee came asking, Ma donated 3 jars of applesauce and some cured pork, and a feed sack nightie she'd sung for our coming baby. February 1934. Mr. Hardley's money handling. It was Daddy's birthday, and Ma decided to bake him a cake. There wasn't money enough for anything like a real present. Ma sent me to fetch the extras with 50 cents she'd been hiding away. "Don't go to Joy City, Billy," she said. "You can't get what we need down Hardley's store." I slipped the coins into my sweater pocket, the pocket without the hole, thinking about how many sheets of new music 50 cents would buy. Mr. Hardley glared when the Wonder Bread door banged shut behind me. He squinted as I creaked across the wooden floor. Mr. Hardley was in the habit of charging too much for his stale food, and he made bad change when he thought he could get away with it. I squinted back at him as I gave him Ma's order. Mr. Harley's been worse than normal since his attic filled with dust and collapsed under the weight. He hired folks for the repairs and argued over every nail at every little minute. The whole place took shoveling for days before he could open again, and some stock was so bad it had to be thrown away. The stove clanked in the corner as Mr. Hanley filled Ma's order. I could smell apples, ground coffee, and peppermint. I sorted through the patterns on the feed bags, sneezed dust, blew my nose. When Mr. Harley finished sacking my things, I paid the bill, and tucking the list in my pocket, along with the change, hurried home, so Ma could bake the cake before Daddy came in. But after Ma emptied the sack, setting each packet out on the oilcloth, she counted her change, and I remembered with a sinking feeling that I hadn't kept an eye on Mr. Harley's money handling, and Mr. Harley had cheated again. Only this time he cheated himself, giving us 4 extra cents. So while Ma makes the cake, I walk back to Mr. Harley's store, back through the dust, back through the Wonder Bread door, thinking about the second-hand music in a moldy box at the shop in Joy City, music I could have for 2 cents a sheet. I placed Mr. Hardley's overpayment on the counter and turned to head back home. Mr. Hardley cleared his throat, and I wondered for a moment if he'd call me back to offer a piece of peppermint or pick me out an apple from the crate, but he didn't, and that's okay. Ma would have thrown a fit if I'd taken a gift from him. February 1934. 50 miles south of home. In Amarillo, wind blew plate glass windows in, tore electric signs down, ripped wheat straight out of the ground. February 1934. Rules of dining. Ma has rules for setting the table. I place plates upside down, glasses bottom side up, napkins folded over forks, knives, and spoons. When dinner's ready, we sit down together, and Ma says, "Now." We shake out our napkins, spread them on our laps, and flip over our glasses and plates, exposing neat circles, round comments on what life would be without dust. Daddy says, "The potatoes are peppered plenty tonight, Polly, and chocolate milk for dinner, aren't we, in Clover?" When really all our pepper and chocolate, it's nothing but dust. I heard word from Livy Killian. The Killians can't find work, can't get food. Livy's brother Reuben, 15 last summer, took off thinking to make it on his own. Hope he's okay. With a baby growing inside Ma, it scares me thinking, where would we be without somewhere to live, without some work to do, without something to eat? At least we've got milk, even if we have to chew it. February 1934. Breaking drought. After 70 days of wind and sun, of wind and clouds, of wind and sand, after 70 days of wind and dust, a little rain came. February 1934. Dazzled. In the kitchen, she's my Ma. In the barn and the field, she's my daddy's wife. But in the parlor, Ma is something different. She isn't much to look at, so long and skinny, her teeth poor, her dark hair always needing a wash. But from the time I was 4, I remember being dazzled by her whenever she played the piano. Daddy bought it, an old Kramer, his wedding gift to her. She came to this house and found gaps in the walls, a rusty bed, no running water, and that piano gleaming in the corner. Daddy gets soft eyes standing behind her while she plays. I want someone to look that way at me. On my 5th birthday, Ma sat down beside her and started me to reading music, started me to playing. I'm not half as good as Ma. She can pull Daddy into the parlor even after the last milking when he's so beat he barely knows his own name, and all he wants is a mattress under his bones. You've got to be something to get his notice that time of day, but Ma can. I'm not half so good with the crazy playing as she is with her fine tunes and her fancy fingerwork, but I'm good enough for Arlie, I guess. March 1934. Dits. Daddy is thinking of taking a loan from Mr. Roosevelt and his men to get some new wheat planted where the winter crop has spindled out and died. Mr. Roosevelt promises Daddy won't have to pay a dime till the crop comes in. Daddy says, I can turn the fields over, start again. It's sure to rain soon. Wheat's sure to grow. Ma says, what if it doesn't? Daddy takes off his hat, roughs up his hair, puts the hat back on. Of course it'll rain, he says. Ma says, Bay, it hasn't rained enough to grow wheat in 3 years. Daddy looks like a fight brewing. He takes that red face out of his out to the barn to keep from feuding with my pregnant mom. I asked Ma how, after all this time, Daddy still believes in rain. Well, it rains enough, Ma says, now and again, to keep a person hoping, but even if it didn't, your Daddy would have to believe. It's coming on spring, and he's a farmer. March 1934. Foul as maggoty stew. Arlie Wanderdale said the rehearsals for Sunny of Sunnyside shouldn't take me out of school more than twice next week. But I told Ma she got angry about my missing school to play piano for some show. Me and Daddy, we're trying our best to please Ma, for fear of what it might do to the baby if we don't. I don't know why she's so against my playing. She says that school's important, but I do all right in school. I know she doesn't like the kind of music I play, but sometimes I think she's just plain jealous when I'm at the piano and she's not. And maybe she's a little afraid of me going somewhere with the music she can't follow. Or of the music taking me so far away one day I'll never come home. Whatever the reason, she said I couldn't do it. Arlie had to get somebody to take my place. I do as she says. I go to school, and in the afternoons I come home, run through my chores, do my reading and my math work at the kitchen table, and all the while I glare at Ma's back with a scowl, foul as maggoty stew. March 1934. State tests. When I got home, I told Ma our school scored higher than the whole state on achievement tests, and I scored top of 8th grade. Ma nodded. I knew you could. That's all she said. She was proud, I could tell, but she didn't coo like Mad Dog's Ma or go on like Miss Killian used to do. Daddy says, that's not your Ma's way. But I wish it was. I wish she'd give me a little more to hold on to than I knew you could. Instead, she makes me feel like she's just taking me in like I was so much flannel dry on the line. March 1934. Fields of flashing light. I heard the wind rise and stumbled from my bed, down the stairs, out the front door, into the yard. The night sky kept flashing. Lightning danced down on its spindly legs. I sensed it before I knew it was coming. I heard it, smelled it, tasted it. Dust. While Ma and Daddy slept, the dust came, tearing up fields where the winter wheat set for harvest in June. Stood helpless. I watched the plants, surviving after so much drought and so much wind. I watched them fry, or flatten, or blow away, like bits of cast-off rags. It wasn't until the dust turned toward the house like a fired locomotive, and I fled, barefoot and breathless, back inside. It wasn't until the dust hissed against the windows, until it ratcheted the roof, that Daddy woke. He ran into the storm, his overalls half hooked over his union suit. "Daddy," I called, "you can't stop dust." Ma told me to cover the beds, push the scatter rugs against the doors, dampen the rags around the windows. Wiping dust out of everything, she made coffee and biscuits, waiting for Daddy to come in. Sometime after 4, rubbing low on her back, Ma sank down into a chair at the kitchen table and covered her face. Daddy didn't come back for hours, not until the temperature dropped so low it brought snow. Ma and I sighed, grateful, staring at the dirty flakes. But our relief didn't last. The wind snatched that snow right off the fields, leaving behind a sea of dust, waves and waves and waves of dust, rippling across our yard. Daddy came in, he sat across from Ma and blew his nose. Mud streamed out. He coughed and spit out mud. If he had cried, his tears would have been mud too. But he didn't cry, and neither did Ma. March 1934.